Morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this fine podcast. Thank you all for coming back and listening to us. Thank you for telling however many friends you have to tell however many friends they have. Because what I'm finding out, like I said, is while most people don't have 50 friends, people do seem to have a lot of friends, and the numbers seem to reflect that for some strange reason. I'm still trying to figure out. But regardless, I appreciate y'all coming back. I know it's been a minute. I know it's been like 2.5 weeks, I think, depending on when you've listened to this. Ideally, I would think that you all would listen as soon as it comes out, but from looking at the numbers again, that's not how you all consume this, which is fine as long as you consume it, which I appreciate. So, with all of that said, thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for reaching out. Thank you all for doing everything that you do. And if you have reached out, I have not forgotten about you. I have just been doing a lot of weird stuff, and I will reach out to you all soon enough. Okay, let me get into what I want to talk about today. Today, I want to talk about options. Yeah, and maybe the lack thereof, or because, or whatever. But that's what I want to talk about today, and specifically talking about the options that we all have in this relationship, marriage, love game that we're all trying to play here. And the reason that this came up was because I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of unhappy people over the recent past. And that's when we talk about like online dating or just conversations with people that I've met outside or whatever. Because if you want to engage somebody, and this is a word to the wise for people that hadn't figured this out yet, if you're ever stuck with somebody and you're kind of in a situation where you need to talk to them because you want to avoid that awkward silence, you're at a party or something like that, or however, I was at a soccer match and met a couple of new people, and I'd never met them before, but we were kind of confined in a space, so there had to be conversation. And because again, you don't want those uncomfortable silences. And if it's a guy, you can always talk about sports. Well, you can usually talk about sports with most people that in this demographic of this podcast, you can talk about sports, and that can kick off the conversation. And that's what I did with him. And for women, you can talk about relationship stuff, which might kind of lead down a weird road, but it will break up the monotony and have you all talking for hours. Now, there's a downside to that, and this didn't happen at the soccer match I was at, but the downside is, as a single man, when you're talking to a single woman about relationships, that can lead them to believe sometimes that you're interested in them when you're just making conversations. And women, I'm sure you definitely have experienced that when talking to guys, because guys are us guys, we're looking for any signal that we can get that you might be interested in us if we're interested in you. So yeah, sometimes giving out those starting those conversations might give out the wrong signals, but hey, I guess it's easier to kind of wiggle your way out of that versus just sitting there in that uncomfortable silence. And some people, just don't really care about the silence. We've grown as a world of people that get behind our keyboard, so we don't know how to have conversations anyway. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. I'm way off on a tangent. So sorry about that, y'all. Yeah, but just talking about people and talking to people who have been unhappy in their relationships, both current and past relationships. And for those people that are in current relationships where they're not happy, I wonder why they got into those relationships in the first place. Maybe they saw something. I don't know. I don't know. Usually people, when they get in relationships and they can say that they were snowed or tricked by somebody, but oftentimes it's more that they just chose to ignore the signs because they were desperately wanted to be in a relationship or be with that person. But with all of that said, I do wonder why they got into those relationships in the first place. And also, I wonder why they stay in those relationships. For people who were in past relationships, I think most people, including myself, I can admit that there were some relationships that I stayed in way too long after I knew that they were over, but I just stayed. And I talked to more and more people who have experienced that same thing. And I talk to people who are in current relationships. And it's like, why are you still there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wonder if those people truly felt like that person that they were with was the best option when they got together. And I wonder if they still feel that that person that they're with currently is their best option. Now, Breakfast Club host Charlemagne, I refuse to call him the God, but Charlemagne, he once said that a person is only as faithful as their options. And I'll modify that a little bit because we're not talking about faithful versus unfaithful and cheating and all of that stuff. We've covered that ad nauseum on both sides, male and female. But this is about what goes into making the choice to be with a person in the first place. And more, it seems to me that people are only together because of their options or lack thereof, that is, or the perceived lack thereof. I think that's the best way to put it, the perceived lack of options. I think we've all seen couples and thought that they were kind of mismatched and always wondered. And I still wonder when I see them, especially at concerts, because that's where I see it the most. Because that's when everybody's like dressed up and trying to do their best, and it's an outing, so I get it. And but when I'm out there, I always wonder if that was the best that he or she could do when I'm looking at those couples. And that's not fair. And it's especially not fair for somebody like me who hates people watching. And I hate it because it gives people like the opportunity to be catty, and I don't like to be catty. But sometimes some of the disparities are so obvious that you do wonder, like, what did that woman that obviously is a personal trainer, what is she doing with that 300-pound dude? I think that's fair to ask that question, or vice versa. Yeah. And I always wonder when I see those mismatches in my mind, maybe not, obviously not to theirs, or maybe it is to theirs. I always wonder if that's the best that he or she could do, regardless of whatever the reason is that they're together. Still, I wonder if they feel like that's the best that they could do. Sometimes the answer is yes, but other times the answer is probably no. So that's all about how the relationships start. Like when you met that person and he was spitting this game or she was doing her thing, if you were thinking, this is the best that I could get, you know, I just wonder about that. So I may as well jump into a relationship with him or her. I know a lot of people, especially women, they are, well, actually men too, because women, they look at men sometimes and look at their potential, whereas men sometimes look at women, and the phrase that many men use toward each other is Captain Save-A-Ho, where you look at that woman and it's like she's got all of this baggage that she's bringing to the table, but you feel like you can save her. And on the other side, women look at that dude with all the baggage that he's bringing, and you're thinking, he's got potential because he has a dream. Now, he doesn't have a realistic way to fulfill that dream, but still, he has a dream. Dollar in a dream. So always, yeah. So always wonder if that's the best that they can get. And when they were getting together, if they thought, this is the best that I can do. So I may as well look at this potential and ride this wave. So sometimes the answer is yes, other times the answer is no. And again, that's how the relationship starts. But I also hear relationships say that, relationship experts rather, also always hear them say that every day you choose to be with that person. Every day you have to make a choice, and the choice is to be with that person or not. And while that sounds cute and romantic and all of that stuff, and I guess it's used when you're fighting and stuff like that, in reality, you're not really making a choice every day to be with that person, because if you really were making a choice and considering that this is the best person that I can be with, I'm guessing that your answer would be no. Please forgive all those sounds in the background. That's just other stuff running. Never mind. So, so when looking at that and looking at what these experts say and looking at these relationships, So not only did you choose to be in that relationship with that person, but you choose to stay with that person every day. Again, that person being the best option that you have to be with. Hmm. And like I just said, I don't venture to say that people don't honestly view it as a daily choice. Or maybe they do view it that way and they do determine that he or she is the best that they can do daily. That is the best option. But if you're consistently happy with that person, that means you're not only choosing that person, you're also choosing unhappiness as the option to go with. So basically, you've convinced yourself that person is your best option of all of the men or all of the women in the world. And that unhappiness with that person is your only option of all the options that you have in the world. Again, summarizing what I just said. Now, don't get me wrong now. People fight, and there are times when you don't like the person that you're with, but you realize that this is a bump in the road and eventually it'll smooth out. So I can understand delaying the choice a little bit while you're going through some of those bumps in the road because you don't want to make a rash decision, and say you're not my best option just because you're having a fight about somebody not picking up their clothes or being late or something like that. So that's one thing. But there are a lot of people that forget a bump in the road every now and then. They're on a road full of potholes with constant bumps that'll never get fixed, and they're still choosing to stay on that road. So I guess they're making the choice that that's the best option that they have. Interesting and a little sad, really, when you break it down. It's like, interesting. But are you really choosing that? Are you really choosing to stay on that road because that's your best option? But what about the option of being by yourself? That's always an option that's out there. But to some people, that's not the best option either. Some people aren't built to be alone. A lot of people aren't built to be alone. I would venture to say most people aren't built to be alone. Yeah. To some, the best option is to be in a bad, loveless relationship, or at least that's a better option than being alone. Okay. Yeah. And the problem with it is that most people won't admit that. I remember back in the day, me and Reggie, yeah, that Reggie, we had a conversation about Cardi B when she took Offset back and she was like, what do you want me to do? Just be by myself? And not to pick on Cardi B, but it was just interesting. And it ties into what we're talking about these options that a person has when it comes to being in love and relationships and all of that stuff. To her, being with a guy that did what he did, cheated on her multiple times, was better than being alone. And to what seems to be their credit, I hadn't heard about any issues with them since. So, hey, maybe the choice of sticking it out was the right choice. I don't know. Maybe that was the best option. I don't know. Time will tell. Yeah, yeah. So for all of those people though that are in denial about not being built to be alone because nobody wants to admit it, even though it's obvious that you don't want to be alone, I'll let those people just sit in denial over there and do their thing. That's cool. So if you rule out being alone as an option, just take that off the table altogether, then are the people in these bad relationships saying that this guy or girl that they're with is the best that they can do, the best that they can get? And I guess that is the case. Because if the option is to be with someone versus being alone, then then being with someone, regardless of who the someone is, then it's just a matter of picking the best someone of the options that you have. Yeah. So so if that's the case, especially if you factor in what you excuse me, if you factor in what you want and what you bring to the table and the effort that you're willing to put in, then you have to factor those things in too. For example, if you want some ice cream and you go to the vegan shop around the corner, your options are obviously limited, you know, because who wants vegan ice cream? But I guess you want, no, actually, no, you just want ice cream. And the vegan shop has ice cream. So you go down there. Okay, another vegan shop has ice cream. I really want ice cream. Let me go to the vegan spot. Okay. Let me also add on the side, no, the vegan ice cream is disgusting. Most vegan things are pretty, anyway. I don't want to get off on vegans and stuff like that because more and more people are moving that in that direction. And it's impressive, but just so you know, not all vegan food is good food. But anyway, you want ice cream, so you go to the vegan shop and you looking through all the vegan choices. You're not vegan, but hey, you just want ice cream. So you choose, of all of the options, you choose the best or the least disgusting of those options. Now, with that said, in this example, there's a Baskin Robbins like a couple miles up the street or down the street, depending on where you're from in this world. But you don't want to drive that far. Or maybe you don't have a car, so you'd have to walk. And you really don't want to walk that far. So you convince yourself that your only options are those disgusting vegan options. Hmm. And instead of walking or driving a couple miles to find more options, you take the best of what's there. The bottom line is this: some of us have many more options than others. And actually, before I get into that, let me just go back to that thought about the whole thing about the ice cream thing. So, yeah, basically, by picking the vegan ice cream, as opposed to going that extra couple of miles, literally and figuratively, to expose yourself to more options, you convince yourself that the vegan ice cream is the best that you can get. So basically, you are limiting your own options in this whole thing. And since I'm on that, because I'm kind of spitballing, and since I'm on that, talking about limiting options and the reasons that people don't have a whole lot of options, some people have more than others. We always have to look at ourselves in that. So the same way that we don't want to go that extra mile, a couple miles, and get some ice cream from Baskin Robbins because we just lazy basically. So we just gonna pick amongst the vegan options. Shout out to Jermaine Dupri. I think he has a vegan ice cream line. I just thought of that. Yeah. But really, when it comes to our options, the vast majority of us are at fault for the reasons that we don't have more options, or we don't feel that we have more options, because that's more of what it comes down to. We limit ourselves in so many ways when it comes to the options by laziness, not willing to eh, go the extra mile for the options, or because we've convinced ourselves that there are no other options. Yeah. Yeah. So one of those two, but both of them are flawed because the vast majority of us in this dating pool, we have more options than we want to admit that we have. We just don't want to do what it takes to expose ourselves to those other options. And it's funny because when looking at it, men blame women and call them crazy. Women blame men and call us crazy. But like I said, and that's the thing, we're all to blame because we don't see that our limited options are our own fault. Like, why, why does The Rock have more options than me? Well, let's look at it. The Rock works out way more than me, and thus he has a body that's way more appealing than mine. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a slouch or anything. I get my workout on for my age and the demographic of this podcast. I'm looking good, if I may say so myself. I'm doing all right. I am proud of that. But I'm not The Rock. If I'm standing next to The Rock and there's a poll of 150 women and you ask, who has the better body here? Probably 145 will pick The Rock. Now, those five that'll pick me, thank you first and foremost. They'll probably pick me because, personal things. I'm more on the thinner side, and there are women that are attracted to that. But on the Rock side, shoot, people will say he's too muscular or whatever. But the majority of women will pick them because you have to account for people's individual tastes. So now, when looking at that, so just because of the way that The Rock looks alone, you just extract everything else out. Or a better example would be Michael B. Jordan, because he's not all like super yoked like The Rock is. But you take either one of those, they're both they're both going to be chosen more than me from those 150 women. Now, okay. Now, what I could do, and what most of us do, we'll be like, we'll make up excuses. We'll make up excuses for that and say, well, shoot, I don't have any options. And The Rock and Michael B. Jordan, they have more options than me because they're just bigger than me and stuff like that. And societal this and pressure that and too busy this and blah, 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 that. And they have money. So they have access to this and blah, blah, blah. That's not it. That's not it. You make time for the things that you care about. And if I really wanted to bulk up to the point to look like The Rock or Michael B. Jordan physically with my body type, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. People would be like, well, they have money so they can get a personal trainer. You in this YouTube era, that's no excuse, because you can find personal trainers, workouts, things like that on YouTube with no problem. Well, I don't have the equipment. I can't afford to go to the gym. Man, crazy as Herschel Walker, he he got big, so he claimed, and he lies a lot, but still, we're gonna go with it for this example. He claims that he did 1,000 push-ups, he did 1,000 sit-ups every day and ran. You have a floor, you can get on that floor and you can do 1,000 push-ups, you can do 1,000 sit-ups and come up with creative things around your house. I've seen workouts where people will lift their couch as a way to like do squats and stuff like that, lift one of the ends and do squats like that. And as far as walking or running is concerned, there's that whole outside. If I don't have a treadmill, I do, thankfully, and I do have my own gym, but still, there's a whole outside with nothing but open road that I could run on if I wanted to. The thing is, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make the time to do those things at the level that they make the time and do those things. So it's not about them, it's about me. So in that case, if I'm standing with the two of them and all these women are flocking over them and only a few are around me, that's on me. That's not on them, because there's nothing stopping me from doing what they do. So as a result, they'll get more options. And as a result, I limit my options. Yeah. So, my fault. Because I'll tell you what, I've seen The Rock's workouts. I ain't doing that. And I love working out too. That's the thing. But nah, I ain't doing that mess. I ain't doing that mess. Now you can point to them, The Rock and Michael B. Jordan, and you can say they have money. And obviously having money increases your options. So whether they look like The Rock or they don't look like The Rock, having money. You look at some of these old people and stuff like that, these old cats with money and stuff like that, all wrinkled and stuff, but they're always around beautiful women. Reminds me of Russell Simmons back in the day. And I know I'm hesitant to bring him up considering all the women that have accused him of rape over the years. But I remember he used to always be around beautiful women. He used to always say, well, hey, they're with me because of my money. I am not denying that. I am not confused about that. Now, with that said, I don't have money like The Rock. You know, I don't have money like Michael B. Jordan. I think that goes without saying. I'm running a podcast. But I live a decent life. I've been fortunate enough to have been around the world and seen a lot of things and done a lot of cool things, had a lot of cool experiences, and I have been stable in my home for 20 something years, and all of these things that point to the fact that I am not struggling. But still, am I not struggling? I'm not on their level. Now, here's also the thing. I'm not a materialistic dude. So my goal isn't to make as much money as I can in life. That has never been my thing. That has never been something that's appealed to me. I have never had the desire to drive the nicest car, live in the best house, or anything like that. Now, I don't know that I would ever like get to the point of where The Rock is, because The Rock is like close to a billionaire now, and I don't know what Michael B. Jordan has, but let's stick with The Rock here. But I could, if I really wanted to, I could get to a nice level that would increase my options. But I prioritize living a fun life versus being rich. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not living in the street, but still, I just don't care about being the richest dude on the block. Never have. That's some people's goals. But those people that are, and they've achieved that, they, yeah, they have a lot more options than I have. So the choice that I make to have a better quality of life in the long term or whatever, as opposed to working 20 hours a day, has limited my options when it comes to, you know, the women that I would get, and definitely compared to The Rock. But it's all my fault. Nobody else's fault, you know? All of the decisions, those are two examples. The work that I choose to do, the workouts that I choose to do, they've impacted the options that I have. So with that said, my perceived limited options are because of what I've chosen not to do, as opposed to everyone or anyone else. So there's no grand conspiracy by the universe that has made the pool shitty, and there's no good options out here. And, oh, I'm just swimming in the shitty pool and all of that stuff. Because what it comes down to is, if I'm in a shitty pool, it's because I won't do the things to move to the nicer pool. I won't go the extra 2 miles to the Baskin Robbins to get better quality ice cream. And to my ladies out there listening, that same thing applies to you, and all the complaining about the options that you have or lack thereof. It's the same thing. For the vast majority of you all, it is your fault. I mean, the vast majority of you, and I'm not taking shots, but the same way I took a shot of myself and said I'm not The Rock, the vast majority of you that's listening to this, that fit into this demographic, you are not Jennifer Lopez in her prime. Hell, you are not Jennifer Lopez now, because she is what, 53? You don't look like Jennifer Lopez now. I don't care what age you are. And this is not everybody. Some of you might think that you are, but a lot of you that do think you are, you might be in denial, or like a Halle Berry in her prime, or Halle Berry now. You are not that. And the one thing that you cannot say about J Lo or Halle Berry, like, because I've heard both of them can be difficult, for whatever that's worth. But despite being difficult, or whatever you want to call them, you cannot say that they do not lack for options, because the two of them, if nothing else, they keep a man. They keep a man, they break up, and then next thing you know, 2 weeks later, they got another one. Shoot, you can even throw Kim Kardashian in that. I know the negative stuff that people have to say about Kim Kardashian, but she keeps a man. She wants one, she gets one. She always has a man, aka options. And the type of man that many of you would love to have, I might say as well, you know but you won't never have those types of options, in the same way that I won't have those types of options that The Rock has, or Michael B. Jordan has. And why not? Because you're not J-Lo. She works out constantly and consistently, just like I talked about with The Rock. Do you? And I'm not talking about walking on a treadmill for 2 miles 3 times a week. No. You pick up weights, you work that out. And I don't want to hear the excuses the same way I didn't have any excuses about I don't have time, I got kids and all of this stuff. You make time for things that you want. And that's what it comes down to. She made time for the things that she want, and one of those things was to look a certain way physically, and it has expanded her options. And also, you need to do more than work and go home. You need to go do more than just go to the vegan ice cream shop, if you want to expand those options. So, whether it's me and being truthful and honest about my options and the role that I play in the options that I have, we all need to be honest and open about the role that we play about our options or lack thereof. That men have it so much better, 77 women to one man. That shit is old. Y'all need to get up off that. And all of that stuff is the dating pool is shitty and all of this stuff. Yep, it is, because the choices that you've made have you in that shitty pool because you don't want to go to the nice pool. You don't want to go to what you don't want to do what it takes to get your butt to the nicer pool. But the nicer pool does exist. And we all need to stop convincing ourselves that just the whole world pool is shitty. It's like, no, the pool you're in is shitty because you choose to be in that shitty pool. And then there are other factors that contribute to your options being limited and stuff like that, attitude and stuff like that. But we're all in this together, you know. So if you want to not swim in a shitty pool, get out of the shitty pool. I don't want to swim in a shitty pool. And I refuse to believe that that's the only option, just swimming in a shitty pool. I tell you what, my optimism knows no bounds. But with all of that said, that's all that I really have to say on that. I want to end because we have to end with either death or divorce. And today we will talk about divorce because one of the things that I like to talk about on this show, I don't know if I like to talk about them, but it just seems to be a running theme of the show, is divorce of couples that have been together for 20 or plus years. I stray from that every now and then. I might go a little bit lower than 20 years, but 20 years is the benchmark because I always wonder if you've been with somebody for 20 plus years, what in the hell happens that you cannot work it out after having been together for that long? Today, in divorce news, I want to point out James Hetfield. For people that don't know, James Hetfield is the lead singer and guitarist for the group Metallica. And even people that don't necessarily listen to Metallica's music, I do, by the way, they at least know the band Metallica because they've been around forever and a day. So he has been married to his wife for 25 years. It was a long time. James and his wife Francesca married in 1997. And 25 years later, they're getting divorced. And they went through his going through rehab, being in a rock and roll band at his peak, all of these things. And now, 25 years later in 2020, they're deciding to call it quits. I'll never know. I'll never understand any of this. But I will say this, though. James did have another relapse, a drug relapse in 2019. So I'm sure that didn't make it easy. But it's I don't know, it's just weird. Well, obviously it's weird, but that's the latest in divorce news, and that's it for me today. And part of the thing I want to emphasize on this podcast and is that we really just need to do a better job of looking at ourselves. I hear so many people blame others for their own shortcomings. Men are the reason that women don't have a man. Women are the reason that men don't have a woman. And we just don't do enough time. We just don't spend enough time talking about what's up with us that's contributing to that? Because I guarantee you there is something that's contributing to it. I have conversations with women on all the time that I meet online, and it's always interesting when I ask them about their past relationships, and it's immediately what he did or what he didn't do. And it's like, it's got to be more than that, because when I talk to guys, it's always about what she did or what she didn't do. So everybody's pointing the finger at each other. And one of the things I want to emphasize again on this podcast is we just need to do a better job of looking at ourselves. That's all I have to say. I am done for the day. Reggie, you want something? You have something to say? Oh, Reggie's actually going to be here in another week. That means nothing to you all because he'll still be acting shy in the background. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you all for listening. I think I am going to start doing these more often. I know I've been on this like 2 week swing, but as we approached our 2 year anniversary, believe it or not, yeah, I think I am going to do these more often, maybe keep them shorter. I don't really know, but yeah, appreciate you all for hanging out. That's all I have to say. And until the next time, goodbye.